What's up guys, it's Nick here at Fantasy Forge Miniatures, and today I'm going to be showing you how to build a mossy bridge. Every good story has a bridge in it, whether it's stopping a Bellrock from killing your entire party, to answering a troll's riddles to cross a river. You need a bridge, and that's exactly what we're going to be building today. So let's get crafting.
Alright, so we're going to be starting off on our Proxxon hot wire foam cutter, and we're going to be setting that guide in to about 2 inches. Now this is a little wider than we want our bridge to be, but you'll see why we're making it a little bit wider now, and we'll bring it down later. So we're just going to grab some 1-inch XPS foam, and we are going to just cut those into 2 strips. So once you've done that, we're just going to glue those pieces together with hot glue. You can use whatever you like, but just making sure getting those as flush as we can. We're going to press those nice and tight. If there's a bit of an edge or a lip, don't worry. That's what the next part we're going to fix is about. So once those are nicely secure together, we're going to bring it back to the Proxxon cutter, and we're going to bring in that cutter about a 1/4 of an inch, and we're going to just pass it through there to make the pieces flush, and then again just bring it a tiny little bit to make sure that other edge is nice and flush. So our width is closer to about 1.5 inches now. So now I'm just marking off how long I want the bridge to be, which is about 8 inches. And I'm just starting to rough out the arc of the bridge. You can get technical with this if you like, but I like eyeballing it. It's just good with a couple measurements. So there we go. We've sharpied it out so that we can make sure and we can see. We're just going to take off the guide, and we're going to set the Proxxon to a nice low setting, because that is going to make it a lot easier to control. The lower heat setting slows the cut down and just gives you better reaction time to be able to move the foam through the wire. So there we go. We're just going to cut that outline, and it might look a little thin. That's okay, because we're going to be adding all the texture to it afterwards, which is really going to kind of bulk it up a bit. So once we have that, we're going to grab our pasta maker. If you don't have one, you can go ahead and roller pin, but we're going to grab some Super Sculpey there. We're going to roll it out into a longer log there, kind of flatten it so it goes through the pasta machine a little bit better. And on the thickest setting, we're just going to roll that right through. Once we have that, we're going to grab some Green World Stuff texture rollers. This one is the Cobblestone, and we're just going to roll that texture right out onto the Super Sculpey. And then we're just going to pull it up off the mat and grab our bridge and just lay it down on top of that. So that's what's going to make our cobblestone pathway on there. So we're going to just cut off the excess, and I gave it just a little bit of runway afterwards just to make sure. And then we're going to cut the edges flush there. Now you want to make sure that your bricks are lined up with how you want on the pathway. You don't want crooked bricks there, so do your best to make sure those lines are straight across the bridge there. And this is strangely satisfying, just cutting off those extra amount by making it flush with the styrofoam there. So just gently cutting off the excess clay. Now we're going to bake it, but we want it to bake in shape, and the styrofoam will melt. So what we're doing here is we're just grabbing some Bristol board. I think this is just poster board from the dollar store, and we're making basically a replica of the arc. So you can see there I've got a center paper cylinder, and then now we're going to lay over another piece to simulate the arc of the bridge so that it can bake in position. So just kind of bending the paper to the same shape as the bridge. So now we're just going to grab the clay off of the bridge and lay it on top of the paper, and now it's good to bake. So once that's baked, you can see there it's all good to go, and it takes about 20 minutes to bake that. And now you can see it's nice and flush, it baked properly, and now we're going to hot glue it onto the top of the bridge. So making sure that you get a nice amount of glue at the start and finish, because we don't want that kind of flipping up at all. So gently putting it down onto there, making sure that's flush the first time. This is very unforgiving if you don't. But now we're going to grab some bricks that we made from a previous video, so you can check that out if you want to see how I made all these ones. We're going to start gluing them together into basically a stone wall, and this is going to act as the sides of our bridge. So just kind of pacing them out. I'm building my wall piece to kind of mirror the arch of the bridge, but if you just wanted to create one big wall segment, you're more than welcome to do that. But to save bricks, I'm kind of following along as the bridge arcs there. So I create another piece just like that, and you can see I'm always going back to the bridge to line them up. Now once you've made that one, we are going to just lay it down, and we're going to use the bridge to draw out where we need to cut. So just grabbing that Sharpie. It doesn't really matter because this thing's going to get painted, so if everything gets markered up, it's totally fine. So I'm tracing out the bridge, and then I'm also now, you can see, tracing out how high I want the walls to be. And then I'm just cutting them away with a brand new blade, so it's nice and smooth, and you can actually use the flex of the knife to actually cut those curves. So always grabbing a miniature, seeing how I like the height. We're going to duplicate that one piece the same way we made the first, and then just using that first one as a stencil, cutting out the second one in the exact same way. You can draw it out and cut it however you like. So there we go. We've got our two wall segments, and it's starting to look a lot like a bridge. So we're going to glue those into place, laying a bunch of hot glue, lining them up, making sure that bottom is nice and flush and the curve is lined up well, and then doing the same for the opposite side. Now, what we're doing here is for our the top of the bridge, the railing. So we want to have a nice cap to the bridge. We're creating nice long single row of bricks, and then we're just going to hot glue those right on top of the entire arch there, and we're going to get a nice kind of a railing top look to it. So just cutting off the excess on each side, making sure those ends are flush, and you'll see why. And we're just going to do it for both sides. Making sure our guy looks good crossing the bridge. Now in this second part, we're going to start building the pillars that are kind of going to be at the base of each end of the bridge. So creating a bunch of 2 blocks like that, then we're just going to start gluing together, crisscrossing, so you get a nice brick stack. You can see there, that's going to be the pillar. So here are a little abnormal sized bricks that you can cut yourself there, and I just textured them there, and they're going to be the tops of our pillars there. So using the same techniques that we used to make the bricks, we made those top pieces. And then just gluing them on, they got a nice little bit of overhang, so we get a really cool pillar look like that. And so we're just going to end up creating 4 of those in the exact same way, because there's going to be one at the base of each one. So now we're just going to glue those all into place, making sure those are flush, so when we glue, you get a nice seamless connection between them. So you can see there, if you have any a little bit of overage, you can just cut it off. So there we have it. Our pillars are attached. That really starting to look like a bridge. So now we're going to do the underside of the bridge. We're going to start connecting a bunch of bricks lengthwise. And you can see here I just glue a couple together. It's kind of a technique so you don't mush them around. I glue a bunch of them together and then glue those together. And then we create these arches. So now you can just gently push those into place, see if they line up, and if you've got enough. Turns out mine worked out perfectly. And that's going to be the under the bridge supports. So here I'm just cutting kind of a decorative cornerstone for the center of the top of the bridge, and then just cutting it in half because that's all I want it to stick out. I don't want it to stick out a full brick length. So there we have it. We're going to start gluing in those archways underneath, and so laying in a good amount, and then actually just pressing the whole thing into place. But then pushing down on it from top helps push the bricks actually up into place like that. and then putting a little bit of glue. After texturing those pieces in the same way, we're just gluing those cornerstones right on, and then we're going to do the exact same thing for the other side, pushing those arches into place. Be careful that they don't break, and then adding in that cornerstone. Now you can cut off any little bit of extra there from our underside of the bridge, and now it's laying nice and flat. All right, so now we're going to start painting. We're going to lay down some wax paper just so we don't get our mat messy. We're grabbing some Mod Podge mixed with black paint. Now this is Mod Podge Firm. You can use regular Mod Podge. It's all the same. And now we're just going to start lightly brushing that on, making sure that we don't leave any excess Mod Podge anywhere, because we want to make sure that that texture shows through. So if you have to add a little bit of water, that's cool too. I find that the paint actually dilutes the Mod Podge enough, so that's good. So once that's done, we're going to let it dry. And after it's dry, start to go with the paint. So we've got our Folk Art light gray, apple barrel pewter gray, licorice black, and our medium gray. So those are the colors that are going to be our base. We're going to mix some black with our medium gray to create a really nice dark gray undercoat. So we're going to make sure that this covers up everything, even any of the print that would be left over from being on the XPS phone. So once we get good coverage on that, we're going to make sure that the entire thing is covered, even the walkway, even though we're going to change the color on that one from gray. So once we get that fully covered, we're going to start in with some apple barrel pewter gray, and we're going to start using the dry brush technique. So we're going to grab some paper towel, we're going to brush off a bunch of the excess paint, and then we're just going to lightly go over the entire build, dry brushing that gray in. So that's going to start to really bring that texture that we've been adding to the build. It's really going to start popping. So you can be pretty liberal with this first coat, because as we go through each color, as we get lighter, we're going to go with a lighter and lighter dry brushing. So next we're going to use that light gray, and again it's going to be a little bit of a lighter dry brush to continually to bring out those great highlights in our textures. And just trying to always catch the edges where, light would. I'm always going in a downward direction. So I'm using some coffee latte, and just adding a little bit of warm brown, kind of stippling it in to add some dimension so that it's not just a grayscale bridge. So just lightly putting that in there. Now we're going to use a linen to do our really, really highlight brushing over here. So linen isn't a pure white, it's a little bit softer and warmer. So now we're going to use a true burgundy mixed with a real brown to create our kind of ready cobblestone pathway over the bridge. So mixing those together and adding in a little bit of black to just tone it down a bit, we're just going to do our first coat over the bridge there. And then the next coat we're going to again dry brush, and we're going to be adding in a little bit of that linen white to make a nice kind of, looks a little pinky, but it works really well for highlighting the burgundy stones there. And then we're just going to add a little bit of the real brown just to simulate mud getting tracked over it. So once that's done, we're going to do a wash. So here I've got a little dollar store spritzer bottle, and it's got basically ink, Flow Aid from Liquidex, and some water. And so we're just going to spray that on pretty liberally over the entire bridge, and that's just going to seep into all the cracks, and then that's where the ink is going to dry and really start to push that contrast. Now if there's any excess, you can just lightly dab it off with a paper towel. Once that's dry, we're going to use a linen again to go over just the highlights, just to bring that back out, those highlights that we kind of toned down with the wash. So just going over that and bringing that texture out for one final contrast push. So you can do that over the entire thing, including the walkway. So now we're going to add the moss, the extra texture. So grab a cup, your flocking, we're just going to dump it into the cup and then put that school glue in there with it and mix it all around. Now I'm not using any tacky glue or something more sticky because the school glue actually has a nice consistency for this. So once you mix that all together, add what you need to make a good mixture, and we're just going to start scraping it onto the bridge and basically letting the edges of the bridge catch the moss. And this actually creates a really natural look to the moss because mosses love to grow on the edges. So the edges are just naturally going to catch your glue flocking mixture, and you're going to get a nice realistic looking flow to your moss. So go ahead and do it on the inside of the bridge as well. I like to shove it into the cracks in between. It also helps cover up any imperfections that you might have on your bridge, and you can just kind of work it into the areas that you need. And there we have it. Our dude looks great on our bridge. That is a fantastic looking bridge.
And that's it, guys. Now you can cross any stream, river, or canyon in style. Now feel free to make your own variations. Maybe a rune version. Maybe one with multiple supports. Whatever you'd like, I'd love to see what you guys come up with. If you found this video helpful, hit the like button, share, subscribe, hit the bell notification if you want to stay up to date with all my videos. Thanks for watching, guys. And as always, keep on crafting.